What's happening, YouTube? It's Simon466 Cards, and today we're going to talk about why people collect retired players and why people collect active player cards, and whether or not those reasons are the same or are they different, or maybe there's just a little bit of similarity between the two. I've been doing a lot of thinking about why we participate in this silly little hobby where we collect players or pictures of players playing a particular sport, and what really makes us as a hobby tick. So this is where that thought process went. So I'm going to use Kobe Bryant as my example for a retired player, and I will use Anthony Edwards as my example for an active player, and why we would collect these two different types of players who are at different stages in their careers, obviously. But they did have a mildly similar playing style, right? So I think we can use these as two good archetype players for this conversation. So let's start off with retired players and why someone collects Kobe Bryant cards as an example. The first one is obvious. People are a fan of Kobe Bryant. That's why you would collect his cards. That's also true of why you collect anybody's cards, whether they're active or a retired player. So we have to dig a little bit deeper. And if we dig a little bit deeper, now if you own a Kobe Bryant card, it's a celebration of that player's career, right? You are celebrating the amazing career that he had as a player, perhaps as a Los Angeles Laker. That plays a big part of it. Obviously, the Lakers have a huge fan base, right? And it also brings back nostalgia to that time when the Lakers were winning championships with Shaq and Kobe, or with Kobe and Pau Gasol or Ron Artest. That era where the Lakers were a dynasty for that period in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then also a short little run at the end of the 2000s there, right? It brings back waves of nostalgia. It brings you back to a time where things were really going the Lakers' way, and Kobe Bryant was, on the top, or, at least on the Mount Rushmore of that era of player, right? And one last reason is you are now able to own cards that you weren't able to own when you were younger. Whether that's because you were a kid back then and you couldn't afford to buy cards, you didn't want to buy cards on eBay, you didn't have the money, you now have a little bit more money now that you're a working adult. Whatever it is, that is a fourth possible reason why you really want to own Kobe Bryant cards now. Now, if we talk about prices and what the outlook is for card prices and what you expect when you buy a Kobe Bryant card or a retired player's card, you don't actually expect the prices to move much in the near term, because there aren't any more catalysts for price appreciation, because he's retired. And unfortunately for Kobe, he's also passed away, right? There's nothing to really drive prices for his cards upwards. And as a result, his card prices are going to be relatively stable, right? There's not going to be too much volatility in his card prices. Now, that's Kobe Bryant. That is a retired player, and why we collect him. Why would someone collect an active player? Well, the first one is exactly the same. You're a fan of Anthony Edwards. You're a fan of, insert your favorite player here. But this is where it gets that gets a little bit different, because when you buy a card of Anthony Edwards, it feels like you're participating in his career by owning his card. You're part of his box scores. You're part of the action. You're part of all of his dunks because you own his cards. And you also buy cards because you like the player, right? As we talked about, but you also expect the player to continue playing well or improve his performance from what he has done in the past. Chances are you're unlikely to buy a player's cards if you think his play is about to decline, because if you actually believe that to be the case, you will wait for his play to decline, because then his card prices will also fall. And so why would you buy when you expect his card prices to fall? You would just wait the 6 months, 3 months, a year to then sell that card, right? Or to buy that card rather than buying it at a higher point. So that's it for why. Now the outlook for card prices is a lot different, because if you expect him to play well, then they're baked into that thought and that logic is that his card prices may also increase as well along with his play. And so that leads to increased volatility because you now have an expectation that he will play well and he will then have his card prices go up. And so when reality doesn't meet expectations, that's when prices start to move a little bit downwards. And so that leads to the extra volatility because there is a catalyst, either negative or positive, to his card because he is still an active player. So when we compare the two archetypes of a active player to a retired player, the one similarity is that you are a fan. You are a fan of this player. There's a longer list of differences if you go down the list here, and it comes down to two main concepts, and I guess is the point of this short little video here, is a retired player's cards are bought as a celebration of that player because they're retired. But when you buy an active player's cards, you buy it to participate in that player's career. So those are like the two very different reasons why you buy a player's cards. Retired player, it's a celebration. An active player, it's participation. And I thought that this actually, in a nutshell, makes sense as to generally why people buy active players cards compared to why people buy a retired player's cards. This is obviously a generalization. There is much more to that, but on the whole, I think this sums it up pretty well. The different types of thoughts and the mindset that goes into buying these two different archetype of players. So that's the quick and dirty of it. And also that sort of explains why for 99.5% of players and their cards, why they go down in value, right? Because if you're buying an active player's cards to participate in their career, well, if they're into their career for in year 5 and year 10, well, there's not that many years left to participate in his career if he's on the latter half of his career. So that value in participating in his career isn't like there's less of it left, right? And so that's why I think card prices will go down for the vast majority of cards. So that's it. That's a video. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Do you agree with my conclusions here of celebration versus participation for a retired player and an active player? Would love to hear your thoughts and comments. I just thought this was an interesting topic to tackle and why it explains most players' cards decrease over time and really peak at when they first come out. Would love to hear your comments down in the comment section below. Thank you as always for listening and watching. I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.